Let's take a look at some of the questions on our test review. Question number 1 asks us to determine in which quadrant the terminal side of these angles lies. We're going to start out with a 177 degree angle. So 177 degrees is, if I start over here at the positive x-axis, moving in the clockwise direction, 177 is bigger than 90, but it is smaller than 180. And so that means the terminal side is going to lie in quadrant 2. Next up is 422 degrees. Now notice this angle is bigger than 360, and so the first thing I'm going to do here is subtract 360 from the angle, and if I do that, we get 62 degrees. And so that means that our angle here, we're going to start at the positive x-axis, move in the counterclockwise direction. We're going to make a full rotation and then go another 62 degrees, which would put us ending in quadrant 1. Now these next two angles, they're negative, and so when we draw our angle, we're still going to start on the positive x-axis, but this time we're going to move in the clockwise direction. We're going to go down from that axis. So negative 254, it's bigger than 90, it's bigger than 180, but it is less than 270. And so we're going to stop here, and that puts us in terminal side in quadrant 2. And finally, negative 505. Now I notice that this angle is bigger than negative 360. So I'm going to add 360 to it, and I'm going to get negative 145 degrees. And so that means when I go to draw this angle, starting at the positive x-axis, we're going to go all the way around. That's negative 360, and then it's bigger than negative 90 but smaller than 180. So we're going to end right here in quadrant 3. All right, next question. In this question, we're asked to find an angle between 0 and 2 pi that is coterminal with each of the following angles. Now, whenever we're looking for coterminal, we are either going to add or subtract 360 degrees, or in this case, we're going to add or subtract 2 pi, since all of these angles that we have are in radians. So I'm going to start over here with 14 pi over 5. And 14 pi over 5, that is bigger than 2 pi, because 14 over 5 is bigger than 2. So I need to subtract 2 pi. And in order to subtract it, I've got to get a common denominator. So this is going to become 14 pi over 5 minus 10 pi over 5. 2 pi can turn into 10 pi over 5. Now I have a common denominator, and I can subtract and get my answer, which is 4 pi over 5. Next up, part B, negative 23 pi over 4. On this one, looks like I wrote them out of order. So let's move over here to change this to a B. All right, got those angles fixed there. On part B, we've got 32 pi over 7. And this is bigger than 2 pi, so I need to subtract 2 pi here. And in order to subtract 2 pi, I need to have a common denominator of 7. And so I'm going to subtract 14 pi over 7, because 14 over 7 is equal to 2. So if I subtract that, 32 minus 14 would be 18 pi over 7. And that 18 over 7, it's not yet between 0 and 2 pi, so we need to subtract 14 pi over 7 again. And this time we end up with 4 pi over 7, which is an angle that is in the range we're looking for. All right, now part C, negative 23 pi over 4. This is a negative angle, and so I'm looking for something between 0 and 2 pi. So I'm going to add 2 pi. And since my denominator is 4, that means I'm going to add 8 pi over 4. So if I do that, negative 23 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4 would be negative 15 pi over 4. And so we're not yet positive again. So we're going to add we're going to add 8 pi over 4 again. And that gives negative 7 pi over 4. Looks like we've got to do this one more time. Negative 7 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4 is equal to just pi over 4. And that would be our coterminal angle. All right, question number 3 asks us to find the exact value for the following. Now this question is going to require you to know your unit circle. And so if you wanted to make a little quick sketch of the unit circle, actually you're going to have to do the first quadrant of the unit circle later on your test. And maybe you could do that before answering this question. But I'm just going to do a quick sketch here and label my angles. This is 30 degrees. Whoa, I don't know if I can fit that in there. Pi over 6, 45 degrees, which is pi over 4, and 60 degrees, which is pi over 3. This is 0, and 90 degrees, or pi over 2. So now we need coordinates of each of the points. I know that my axis over here is 1, 0, and this axis up here is 0, 1. My first point here is going to have the coordinates square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. Next up at the 45 degree, that's square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. That's the one where they're the same. And at 60 degrees, 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. All right, so now that we have that quick sketch of the first quadrant, let's see if we can fill in these values. Cosine of pi over 6. If I look over here at my drawing, pi over 6 is here. Cosine is the x-coordinate, which is square root of 3 over 2. Sine of 60 degrees. 60 degrees is here. Sine is the y-coordinate, and so again we get square root of 3 over 2. All right, next up is sine of 270. Now 270, that is an axis angle. If we extend out our axes, over here would be 180 degrees, and this is 270 degrees. And so what I want to know is the sine of this angle. The coordinates of this point down here would be 0, -1. My x would be 0 because we're on the y-axis. And remember, sine is the y-coordinate, so that's going to be -1. Last up, sine of 5 pi over 4. Now for this angle, we're going to go to the pi over 4 over here in the first quadrant. And sine is going to be the y-coordinate, which is square root of 2 over 2. So for 5 pi over 4, since its denominator is 4, I know this is going to be equal to square root of 2 over 2, either positive or negative. I've got to figure out what quadrant 5 pi over 4 is in. Now notice that 5 is bigger than 4, which means that that angle is bigger than 1 pi, which would be over here at 180 degrees. 5 pi over 4 is actually here in the third quadrant, which would mean that sine is negative. All right, next question, and probably the last question for this video. 152 degree angle is in standard position with point P that has coordinates negative 0.883, 0.469 on the terminal side of the angle. Determine the angle for each pair of coordinates given below. So I'm going to sketch a picture real quick of our given angle, which is 152 degrees. So that's going to be over here in quadrant 2. 152 degrees. And we have a point out here on this angle that has these coordinates, negative 0.883, 0.469. And we're trying to figure out which angles go with these other coordinates. And notice the numbers match. The only difference here are the signs. And so what I'm looking for is my reference angle. My reference angle would be this angle right in here. And I can determine that by subtracting 152 from 180. 180 minus 152 is 28 degrees. And so that's my reference angle. So for question A, notice that both of the coordinates are positive, which means I want to draw this reference angle in quadrant 1. And so if I draw that same angle in quadrant 1, well, it's just going to be 28 degrees. Now, question B, both of the coordinates are negative, and that means this angle is going to be in quadrant 3. So I'm going to draw this same angle down into quadrant 3. My reference is still 28 degrees, so to find this angle, I need to do 180 degrees plus the 28, because that's what's going to get me all the way to here, 180 plus 28. And so this would be 208 degrees. Now finally for part C, I've got a positive x and a negative y, and that means that we're going to be over here in quadrant 4. And again, my reference angle is 280 degrees, but I really want to know this angle here. So in order to find that one, we're going to do 360 minus 28, which of course would be 332 degrees.